English translation. 38th contact. Thursday, 13th November 1975, 9:36. Ars thought transmission contact.
The need requires contacting you and giving you some facts of importance that are truly of great significance for your elucidation. Since, as I noticed this morning, you are only able to walk under very great pain, I do not want to lead you out to a personal contact.
That is very sweet of you, and I am really very happy about that. I am actually in some pain, and when I move, there is a lot of rumbling going on. It is giving me a hard time to even sit here at this table. I am sure it will be all right, though. The stupid stuff has been bothering me for a few days now, and I just could not control it. It must have improved a bit during the last night, but really only very little. But it was probably only because of the sleep, because now it is as before again. But I cannot control such things, because they do not fall within my realm of possibility.
I know it, because everything has to be learned first. Even if you know and understand different things, certain things do not suit you yet. Every learning requires long periods of time and a lot of patience, which you know.
Yes, I am aware of that, even though one is often annoyed that this is the case. But you said earlier that you have important things to explain, and it certainly cannot be my stupid complaints. But then please remember that I still have a few things to ask you, because yesterday evening I noticed different ambiguities, which cannot be rhymed with different factors. I would like to be clear about that. These are your specifications regarding the Ashtar Sharon. Either you did not give me full details, or you were halfway oriented. There is something wrong with this, because last night I learned things that just cannot be rhymed. That is one question, and I have a few others. But the first one is the most important one for me at the moment.
Your question is very interesting because I get in touch with you exactly for the reason of your question.
Are you saying that you will contact me for more information about this Ashtar Sharon?
Sure, even if I was not oriented about your thoughts due to your blockade. But be aware that I did not hide anything from you regarding my information about Arusc, because I told you exactly what we had established up to that point. I had already warned you much earlier that I would inform you of our results as soon as I had them. I have also kept this promise, and indeed to the full extent. I did not hide anything from you, whereby I did not express any suspicions to you, even though they existed. But as long as assumptions and possibilities are not proven to be facts, I cannot tell you them as truth. Since this was not yet the case with my last statements on this matter, I was therefore unable to talk about it. At the time I sent you the last details, we had certain assumptions which we were not yet able to clarify. That is why I did not tell you. In the meantime, however, a group of us entrusted with these facts were not able to completely clarify the matter around Arusc, alias Ashtar Sharon, alias, etc., but to a large extent, so I can convey the results to you today as an important matter. And I would like to expressly point out to you that I have explained to you earlier that I will inform you at the right time about the state of affairs, which is why I come to you today on my own. So you therefore see that I live up to my words. But now, you shall not obtain the status of clarification of Ashtar Sharon, alias Arusc, alias anyway through me, but through Quetzal, who led the investigative work in these matters. He will now turn to you and give you the necessary explanations. When he has finished his task, I will switch myself on again and be at your disposal to answer.
Thank you, Simyase.
Be greeted, my friend. It is an edifying joy for me to be able to come to you another time. This time I will give you explanations that Simyase has spoken about with you in relation to the events surrounding Ashtar Sharon, who in truth was named Arusc, and who carries further names yet. So then, follow my words exactly and comprehend what I have to say to you. Every life form is subject to the change of progressive evolution. Subsequently, it collects cognitions and truth. Negative and positive powers become transformed in the balance and therewith, thus in the power of life and constancy. The path of evolution is very long and burdensome, and it is marked by many kinds of external influences. In particular, the influences of the same kind of life forms exert powers over a single life form, which this life form is only able to control through living through greater spaces of time and teachings, from which understanding and recognition result. This course of evolution belongs to the higher and highest life forms, just as it does also to the lower and lowest forms. This is a creational law of evolution, which possesses its validity for all times, and it is never subject to any kind of alterations. That is why this law also has validity for Arusc, who, out of certain grounds, is known to you from accounts as Ashtar Sharan. Because, therefore, also he is subject to this law, like all his co-workers and also those who were before him, understanding and recognition is, and was, inescapable for them. Even though it has also lasted a very long time, indeed, the point in time came when certain things had to change through the progression of the recognition of the truth. In connection with Arusc, concerning the direct and indirect, there is the following: Arusc, alias Ashtar Sharan, and so forth, is, as far as the fulfillment of his apportioned mission is concerned, the leader of an assembly of intelligences consisting of thousands of individuals, who, until 15 years ago, stood under the direct command of the world control-seeking Kamagol. Arusc and Kamagol are, according to their blood association, cousins, as it is named by you. But Kamagol is the leader and ruler over a splinter group of many thousands of descendants who, in earlier times, were separated, which means that this group had been separated by those powers who, earlier, possessed the control over your earth and whose highest leader was an Ishwish, as it has always been. However, power struggles and lust for power also ruled among them, as unfortunately is characteristic of the human life form in its course of evolution. One of the most greedy for might at that time was Arusc, who, with a group of many thousands, broke away from the majority of the celestial sons who had already become peaceful, and went his own way with the mind to make the earth and its life forms subordinate. His way of obtaining his goal was that of lies and deceit, of misleading and false teaching in the form of cultic false teachings, which he was able to very skillfully weave into the religious teachings. Through emissaries and earth humans who had succumbed to him, he mixed these teachings among the earth humans, whereby he soon won many followers of his false teachings. It was primarily the gypsies on the Nile and in the further vicinity of the Mediterranean Sea and the Red Sea who fanatically hung on his false teachings and began to spread them. But the Hebrews, as they were, later freed themselves from this rule, as Arusc had to cede control to his successor, who was then named Jehovah and so forth, in the tongue of the earth humans. Having grown in the number of their people, the Hebrews created their own might and elected themselves as chosen ones. They assumed for themselves the right to be qualified for world control and to be worthy as chosen people, although they were never a people, rather only a low human group of gypsies of all kinds of colors and races who had come together. But since the events of that time, they unjustifiably presented themselves as the first ones, as the pre-entitled to rule the earth, faithful to the examples who wanted to bring the whole earth into bondage. Thereby, they became renegades, as also were their models, who now from their side had to seek new ways to realize their wishes for power. They found these ways then also through Kamagol I, who succeeded Jehovah, who had assumed the name of an Ish-wish. Like no ruler before, Kamagol I forced all terrestrial religions into the frame of blood-demanding cults, which, unfortunately, were able to be maintained on the earth up to the current time. In spite of many efforts of the righteous celestial sons, they were not able to prohibit his evil machinations. Therefore he could grasp the cultic religions around himself more and more and control the world. Mighty in many kinds of technical and consciousness-related resources and powers, Kamagol's assembly was able to force the Earth humans into its power and completely lead them into a cultic religion confusion. However, also Kamagol I could not assert his position of power because, after he had created for himself a center and a headquarters deep under the surface of the pyramids of Giza, he was overthrown and disempowered by his own son, Kamagol II. In many things, he was even more malicious than his father, which he also soon proved through the introduction of monstrous mass killings of the Earth humans. Very many bloody events on the earth which were carried out through the cultic religions, in truth, concern the will and the influencing of Kamagol II. He and his assembly have become known in insider circles as the Giza intelligences. This is because they maintain their actual command center there and guide all events from there. Many kinds of efforts were undertaken to prepare an end for this command center and the driving force of this malicious assembly. Yet that has basically failed up until now, because they have secured everything so much that effective alterations could only be obtained with malicious illogical force, which is not allowed to us and all others who are oriented regarding these facts. Kamagol I now selected one of his cousins as the authority over a group of thousands of individuals which had a quite special mission to fulfill, or would have had. This task was essentially based on the telenotic guiding of various groups of humans of Aryan lineage into certain paths, in particular in Germany, America, Argentina, and Brazil, in order to provide unconscious assistance for Kamagol's plans. During the first time period, Arusc, therefore Ashtar Sharan, and whatever his other names may yet be, followed these orders unconditionally, so thereby Kamagol allocated further great power. But in the course of time he obtained many kinds of understanding and modified his behavior. Until then, he acted only according to the orders of Kamagol, so he only modified his tactic unnoticeably, and thereby influenced, firstly, his assembly, which he indeed required. By and by, he obtained their trust, and they acknowledged him as their actual leader. So it was an easy game for him to, by and by, include the obtained understanding of the truth, and also to act according to it, even with the knowledge of his assembly. With their acquiescence, they loosened themselves from the control of Kamagol and formed a new splinter group. That happened in the Earth year 1933. Since then, Arusc followed his mission, imposed on him by Kamagol to a degree, and transmitted his messages to various Earth humans using telepathic impulses. Because, however, he is not yet completely conscious of the truth, in his messages arise contradictions to which, however, no attention may be given. In various matters of the truth he is yet inexperienced, so he has to learn it first. Nevertheless, however, his messages in the principal matters are extremely faithful to the truth and stimulate joy. But on the basis of security for his assembly and himself, in certain things he gives unclear and not correct, and therefore false, statements, which is, however, entirely excusable. So, statements about his place of residence also do not correspond to correctness, which, however, effects no severance with his obtained love of truth. This is a security for him and his assembly, so that they do not come into conflict with Kamagol's assembly. In spite of all of our possibilities, we have not succeeded in finding his whereabouts. Apparently he and his assembly have received, through some sort of circumstances, very high and valuable knowledge of security measures which they make use of, and that we are not able to investigate with all our possibilities. But that is not of significance, because those kind of occurrences often happen if individual groups break off from a forceful control and seek the way of the truth. So Arusc, with his assembly, can hold up in a very greatly distant galaxy or even in another dimension, where they are absolutely secure from Kamagol's grasp. However, they are able to do their mission in spite of that, because their consciousness-based and technical possibilities make it possible to bridge all distances in space and time. This is the state of these matters that I had to explain to you.
Quetzal, that is of more value to me, more value than any material fortune. Your explanation says, therefore, that Arusc has broken away from the Giza intelligences and has made himself autonomous. That is tremendously gratifying. It is only a shame that you did not already discover this earlier. The previous meager statements from Simya-se have unfortunately created a somewhat worse picture.
It is known to me, yet we did not want to leave you and the interested ones in uncertainty, that Arusc belonged to the Giza intelligences. But we can just now transmit to you the truth known to us up until now, because we know it somewhat better. Still to mention, at any rate, is that, in spite of everything, a great factor of uncertainty exists in regard to the probity of Arusc, alias Ashtar Sharan, alias subsequently, it cannot be said with certainty that an intrigue and falseness is not still indeed hidden, in the end, behind the present manner of behavior. Ashtar Sharan's change of attitude provides, namely, some puzzle.
I understand, and I see that it indeed is my own mistake if Ashtar Sharan or Arusc, as he indeed really may be called, has maybe become wrongly evaluated by us. Simya-se really knew nothing about it because I myself at that time pressed her to keep me abreast of events. On the other hand, however, she could have said to me that her statements are not yet complete, and moreover, are maybe doubtful.
With that you speak a good word, indeed. We also are often subject to mistakes, maybe also regarding our present assumptions regarding Ashtar Sharan. Now live in peace.
Farewell, and thank you very much.
He is always so detailed, but he knows where to start and end.
That is typically feminine. But he did explain some very interesting things. But how about my questions?
Just ask.
Well, the question was addressed to me. Why do not you continue to educate us in your type of the spiritual teaching?
Only Hans Jacob could have asked that question, could he not?
If you already know.
That is his manner. He often thinks a little slowly. I have also noticed several times that he criticizes various things and is not satisfied with the given. This corresponds to his impulse that he wants to know more than is beneficial to him. He should be a little more moderate in these desires. On the other hand, I must not divulge more knowledge in any form than can be accepted by all in evolutionary terms. In the announcement of this knowledge, I already go to the extreme limits, which often gives me trouble to be able to still control everything. But it is also the case that Hans Jacob often does not process my or other clarifications precisely enough, which gives him the impression of being deficient. It would simply be more given to him if we were to expose the last secrets to him openly, so that he would no longer have to make any conscious effort of his own. But this must not be the case, because we cannot spare him the course of evolution. That is true of everyone. We can reveal a great deal of knowledge and many secrets, but everything must always be oriented in such a manner that certain values still have to be worked, therein worked out through the consciousness work of the individual. Hans Jacob should become aware of this. He is also to wait for your spiritual teaching, which you will write in the future according to your destiny. It is pointless and, on the other hand, also irresponsible if from our or from your side the spiritual teaching is transmitted in larger extents, then this can be borne by the individual interested ones. From one treasure of knowledge to another, smaller or larger periods of time must be inserted during which the offered must find its attention and the necessary understanding. Simply to give many explanations and an enormous knowledge that these explanations and knowledge are called is illogical. Everything must bear fruit when something is given before the next seed can be sown. We and you, however, have already given much more than has been processed so far, because many of the teachings transmitted by us and you have not yet been evaluated, understood, and accepted, especially not by Hans Jacob. Knowledge of things and truth alone is not enough, because the truths and wisdom contained therein and all paths must also be analyzed, understood, and committed. Thus, both through us and through you, new values of the spiritual teaching can only be revealed from time to time, and only in precisely dosed form. At present, only one of your group members is able, on a small scale, to grasp and evaluate the teaching offered to a small extent. It is an elderly woman who I find extremely endearing and who is of enormous intelligence. I have been interested in her several times and have always felt astonishing emotions in me because she is marked by an unusual receptivity to the truth. She has grasped the core of things very quickly and learns the new facts at a speed that can only be explained by her high consciousness-based potency. It is admirable, and we are all delighted that she has found access to your group.
I already know who you are talking about.
Sure, you have to know.
Right, because you are talking about Margaret Rufer in Zurich.
Certainly.
Then we know the same. But it was really not to be overlooked. I myself am also very happy, and often when I think about her, I feel an incredibly beneficial connection with her.
Sure, it is in your case the bond of universal love.
You said that very nicely.
Truth can often sound kind.
Of course, and it is the joy of it, that this form is able to neutralize everything that causes pain by the hard truth. For example, also the events around F. Liniger and R. Liniger in Olten, which have set themselves apart.
Sure, but with these two persons it has the special reason concerning the somewhat strange photographer Schmid who influenced R. Liniger so negatively. In the case of F. Liniger, however, two further points are of importance, for he withdrew not only as a result of the photographer's malicious, stupid, and audacious assertions, but also for family reasons on the one hand, and because he was unable to cope with a transmitted truth on the other. He did not even know how to analyze and accept them, and that was the most serious reason for his ill-considered action. The words and teachings of the spirit form Patahli caused him to go astray, because he did not want to acknowledge the truth. Through various wrong influences and thought processes, he feels called to the spiritual healing of his fellow humans and wants to carry out this activity with all means. He does not want to be instructed and clings to his ideas in an unreasonable form, even if he thereby inhibits the evolution of all those to whom he applies his supposed powers. He does not want to be taught that in his form. Today, he has been given the task of making the use of the power of consciousness accessible to his fellow human beings in order to provide them with the greatest and most valuable help.
I know, and it is really too bad about him. But I do not know what I could do to caution him.
This is not your task, for he will otherwise become accessible to the truth, albeit only in a coming further life with a new personality.
The only question is when that will be.
Time is not important in his case, for he has entered a stage that will allow him to find the truth in the first draws of this life.
Then one can rest assured. But now I would like to ask you the second question. It refers to several of your and your father's statements. I have received explanations from you regarding the comet, the ozone belt, and many other things. A few weeks or months later, there were always articles in the newspapers that referred to this information and practically confirmed it. Can you give me...
Say why. This question does not come from you because I know very well that it was hatched by Hans Jacob in Wetzikon. This question has lurked in him for a long time, and as usual, it arises from his unjustified mistrust and his desire to criticize. Only earlier I explained that he should strive for all things in more intensive form. Then he would grasp the things themselves in their reasons through a logical form of thinking. Nevertheless, I will try to relieve him of his apparently difficult thinking and answer the question. All information given to you in this regard is based on analyses or experiences, etc., which we have developed ourselves. Often these also coincide with statements made or to be made by Earth humans at the same time. This is the time-related rectification in your world. But on the other hand, different Earth humans are constantly guided in their research to some knowledge, which they then have to attain automatically. These influences take place from outside and fulfill their specific purposes. When a single human being on the Earth or even a whole group has reached the point where they gain the knowledge they have gained, then they come into the public eye. But only at the appropriate time when the findings can be disseminated without causing harm. However, they are not able to control this, which is why they are partially controlled. But from our side, we are able to judge these things better, so that we can transmit certain information at the appropriate times before they are announced by human beings. These times vary, however, only slightly, so we can often name certain things only a few days, weeks, or months before the Earth human announcements.
Well, I can accept that explanation. But now I would like to come back to the question about the list of contact persons. Secretly, you promised me that you would create one for me so that we could prepare for it.
I have fulfilled your wish, and I can give you the list at the next personal contact.
Can you not just give me the names?
Sure, if that seems so satisfying to you.
Of course.
But then you still have quite a lot to write, because I have to give you relevant explanations when different names are mentioned.
I do not mind a little extra work, you know that.
Certainly. Then I will give you the list. All these contact persons are only Earth humans who, in this century, have truly been or are still in some form, not always physical, of connection with extraterrestrial intelligences. Some of them are already departed from the Earth. There were others who were forcibly contacted. This list contains only the most important contact persons, because in reality there are more who are unofficially known. And when I speak of unofficial, then I think as little as my father of the earthly world public, but of small unofficial circles, which spread certain truths, but which do not mention that among them are persons who have some kind of contact with extraterrestrials. The persons whom I will now name are Earth humans, who, however, are not of great importance concerning the spiritual teaching, but who partly appear in public on Earth. Ingdom Dr. H. C. Daniel Fry Don USA. Mr. Fry was granted permission to fly by a spacefaring species from a space-time structure of a foreign kind. Beware of religious expressions, for these come from him. Professor João Freitas de Guimarães, Brasil. Never had permission to fly, only real vision contact of this form. Victor Schauberger, Austria. Mr. Schauberger's contact with extraterrestrial intelligences was limited exclusively to impulse telepathic forms. Gustav Meyrink, Austria. He was a mystic under his sign and created various telepathically impulsed received works. Ray Stanford, USA. Visual contactors and real vision contactors. Mario Bertossi, Germany. His contact with extraterrestrials was purely technological and lasted only a fraction of a second. Albert Einstein, Germany, Switzerland, USA, was in direct contact with extraterrestrial intelligences and was also an ancient spiritual life form incarnated by them on the Earth. Albert Schweitzer, France, Africa. The information is the same as for Albert Einstein. Both persons stood on the same level of consciousness and spirit, hence the striking similarity. Charles Hickson, USA. This person was forcibly contacted. Calvin Parker, USA. He too was forcibly contacted. Betty Hill, USA, was forcibly contacted. Barney Hill, USA, was also forcibly contacted. In addition to these forcibly contacted Earth humans, there are 31 more, but they are of no great importance. However, the four mentioned here are of great importance. This is with regard to their compulsive contacting. Josephina Berkman, South Africa. She was allowed to fly. Maintained silence. The aliens were the same as Daniel Fry, USA, Yuri Gagarin, USSR, Dr. James E. McDonald, USA. He was a physicist and was in telepathic contact with extraterrestrial intelligences, about which he remained silent. Rudolf Steiner, Switzerland. Impulse telepathy contacts with extraterrestrials. Alois Rickenbach, Switzerland. Personal contact with extraterrestrials who do not belong in your space-time structure. Extraterrestrials like Fry? However, he remained silent about this, but not vis-a-vis Hans Jacob. Horst Rapps, Germany. Real vision contact. Charles A. Maney, USA. Direct contact with extraterrestrials like Fry's, but he kept quiet about it. Arthur Burlett, Brazil. Real vision contact. Wilbert B. Smith, Canada. Direct contact with extraterrestrials as with Fry, but remained silent by order. Was infiltrated as head of the Project Magnet. This is the list I may give you for the time being. I am not yet allowed to give any information about 3 other contact persons who are known to the public on Earth.
That is enough for me for today with those names. Sure, but you will give me the other 3 names when the time comes, will not you?
With certainty.
Well, you have now mentioned a word several times which is completely unknown to me. I mean this real vision? What is the meaning of this?
I understand. Of course you cannot know that, because it is our own word composition for a certain form of guided vision.
Then I certainly cannot find it in the dictionary.
That will be the case because the coining of this word originates from our sense.
Then please explain to me what it means.
You are just untiring, but I want to meet your wishes. A real vision describes a certain form of a guided vision. It is a form of vision that is dominated by many intelligences, including the Giza intelligences. By these arbitrarily provocable and steerable visions, different extraterrestrials, and also we, influence life forms in order to obtain certain impressions for them in this manner, which are instructive to them and which they are to make accessible by spreading also to others, in order to also purposefully affect the surroundings. These steerable visions are so massively realistic that the influenced life form becomes convinced that it has experienced the vision as reality. That is exactly why we call it real vision, because it seems so real. Every experience experienced through this real vision lasts as long as it would take in reality. Such real visions do not only last seconds or minutes, but they last as long in time as the real experiences would take.
That is fantastic. This means that a human being can have an experience that is in reality not an experience at all, but arises only from a fictitious vision, but that he or she is not able to distinguish this vision from reality, and thus regards the illusory experience as the truth of an experience.
Certainly that is the exact description.
But if a person now has an experience, is released from it and lives normally again, in order to be supplied later again with such a real vision, what happens then?
Nothing, because their real visions and reality are an interlocking sequence of events that cannot be distinguished from each other, at least not for the Earth humans.
That is more than fantastic. Man, oh boy. So I could, for example, get a real vision missed by you, and would assume in my consciousness that I had experienced the vision as reality. Then I would just live on and lead the normal life, and after some time I would again be marked by you with a real vision, the experiences of which I would again perceive as reality, without ever coming across the fact that in truth I only succumbed to one vision.
That is actually the case, only you set a bad example with yourself.
Why?
Because you can tell reality from a real vision.
This is crazy. Why should I be able to do this?
Therefore,
Gosh, girl, how did I get into your ship all of a sudden?
do you see now?
It does not make any sense to me. How do you do that? Just now, I was in your beam ship, and at the same time, I sat here in front of the typewriter and wrote down my question why I was suddenly in your ship. Girl, you are kidding. You were just fooling me into believing something, even if I am itching to assume that I really was in the ship with you earlier. The urge to believe that is so damn strong. Why?
Do you see now? This was a real vision of only a few seconds' duration. But you have a block inside you that always lets you see reality. Other life forms, however, do not have this block, and in a fraction of a second, they succumb to the urge to accept what they have experienced as given truth.
That is crazy, girl. But for all the world's sake, why are you doing this? It is cheating.
Applied in this form, it is not a deception, for the process serves to expand the truth in the life form in question. If Earth humans are influenced in this manner, then this happens only for the reason that they are not capable of experiencing the visionary experiences given to them in reality.
I accept that. But now you said that these real visions last exactly as long as the real experience takes in time. So a lot of time could flow by and many hours could pass?
Sure, even days, weeks, or months.
Man, poor creatures will starve to death.
You forget that the vision seems very massively real.
You mean that the affected then feel their natural needs, like hunger and thirst or tiredness, etc.
Certainly.
But what do people eat and drink, and if they have long, real visions outside the house, where do they sleep?
It is very simple. In the state of real vision, they are master of many consciousness-based powers, which also slumber in their subconscious. They then apply these subconsciously in such a form that they condense matter through the thirst and hunger feeling and solidify exactly those edible and drinkable things that they experience in their real visions. That is how they then also nourish themselves. It is the same process as it was demonstrated 2,000 years ago by Emmanuel when he fed 250 Earth humans. Tradition of 5,000 is wrong. There were only 250, with bread, which he multiplied in this manner. The difference lies only in the fact that people with real visionary influence apply their abilities subconsciously, while Emmanuel was able to generate them consciously.
But that does not explain the things of sleep yet.
In this respect, the affected persons behave quite normally. They take care of themselves in every respect, as they are used to, but sleep somewhere outdoors when they are away from home. As a rule, however, in real visions, it is set up in such a manner that the affected persons are directed to some trustworthy persons, where they can stay for the time of the vision and where they are naturally fed. As a rule, these confidants are also influenced, but in a different form if they are taking care of the visionaries.
That is interesting. But what do these people say?
They are so influenced that they have no memories of the visionaries entrusted to them.
Fantastic. My head is starting to smoke from these things. But I can see from your statements that Mr. Raps and Mr. Burlett, for example, never flew in spaceships and had their experiences only in the form you mentioned.
Certainly.
All right, enough with that. But what about the folks who received Ashtar Sharan's messages? As far as I know, one of these people is called Spear. But this one is not on your list. On the other hand, however, there are many other well-known names of persons who are specifically mentioned in books and writings by Venta publishers.
The Arusc group in Berlin is a particularity and does not belong to the areas of extraterrestrial intelligence. As you have been oriented by Quetzal, Arusc has been pinning his hopes on the Giza intelligences, and therefore it is necessary to wait for further development first. Furthermore, we are informed about the names in books and writings of the Venta publishers as well as many other groups and individuals. But as contact persons, they are completely foreign to us, although we know from many of them that they partly belong to the Giza intelligences or grossly abuse any truth. The Venta publishers are sectarian in nature and also publish false contact reports.
There will be an uproar, Simya say, because Venta publishers has a lot of names,
Of which only a few belong to very few real contact persons.
You are quite radical.
The truth often sounds very hard, you know that.
Well, I know that very well. But Venta publishers also mentions a woman from Johannesburg or somewhere else in South Africa. I do not find her on your list either.
Sure, what could I call her if she does not deal as a contact person in any real form?
You once spoke of a person in the African region, or was it your father?
You have that person's name. It is the woman Josephina Berkman.
I always thought it was Elizabeth Clarer, because this woman is called Duist.
We are well aware of her assertions. We are also well acquainted with her character, but today we are not interested in her. For more than a decade, we have made efforts for her and monitored her and have found no evidence that she has been or still is connected to any alien life forms. Also, the consciousness analyzers did not yield any clues, neither did the exploration of the subconscious. The only data resulted in memory factors regarding various irrelevant sightings of their unknown flying ships. Interestingly, however, she seems to have acquired the knowledge about the experiences of Josephina Berkman, although she does not know this contact person, which is perfectly certain. There is only the explanation that somehow and incomprehensibly she is able to penetrate into the subconscious of Mrs.
So you have no final clarity about this woman, Clarer?
No. But she has not had any contact with extraterrestrials, and that is absolutely certain.
Aha, but I heard only yesterday that Mrs.
Who logically lives somewhere on a foreign planet.
Exactly. That is what I was told.
This is absurd. We know very well that this is not the case. The woman is too little evolved in every conceivable sense to be chosen for such undertakings by any extraterrestrial intelligences, if such undertakings were to take place at all. According to her consciousness-based form, the woman is very underdeveloped and lives in semi-religious cult slavery. So, such an assertion that she became a mother through an extraterrestrial intelligence comes from an evil falsehood and a confused, abnormal sexual fantasy.
I felt everything almost in the same manner.
Sure, but now I have something to explain to you. It is to do with your findings about the Spanish dictator Franco. You analyzed his date of death, and I told you not to mention it. As usual, however, Hans Jacob has put you under pressure to write down the date. I found that out during a checkup inside him. I also know his reasons for saying that this is proof of the accuracy of our predictive power. I can understand that when I consider the constant mistrust of Earth humans. But it is in no wise of significance and importance if we know upcoming events in advance, and whether we make them known or not. In many cases, such announcements would even have catastrophic consequences, which is why we must refrain from making them. But anyone who wants to accept the facts can do so and act accordingly. Well, despite my admonition, you wrote the date of Francesco Franco's death in a letter and brought it to the post office in a place called Arusc, addressed to Mr. Hans Jacob. It was well-intentioned by you, but we must not allow this negligence to happen, because there are many possibilities with which the letter could have been opened too early despite your precautions. So I had to intervene and stop your letter from the day of posting on the 5th of November. It is not lost, but only insured by being deposited in a safe place, from where it will be transported only when the date of Franco's death mentioned in the letter has become present.
It is also all right with me, Siemyase. I really did act rashly.
The incident is not of great importance because by monitoring Hans Jacob, I was prepared for the event and could oversee your action and intervene in time.
That is good. I was really worried, because the letter has not arrived to Hans Jacob yet. Now, however, I have one last question, namely concerning the Bermuda Triangle, and here especially because of the world in the other dimension. Can you describe this world to me?
There are several worlds and several dimensions, and if I had to describe them, it would go much too far. One of these worlds, however, is a parallel world to yours and has only minor differences. A second one, however, is very remarkable because 3 almost similar planets are in a line behind each other. So if you were to go through the dimensional gate, you would again come to an Earth or world, but in another dimension and thus in another time level. But the time lies very far back from your present time, namely in that time when the Earth, still inhabited by flying dinosaurs, was quite wild and fissured. You could not breathe the atmosphere there and would have to wear a spacesuit or other protective suit.
So this means that the dimensional gate fluctuates in its intensity, and thus opens gates to different dimensions or spheres.
Sure, you expressed that very precisely.
Well, but now again to this triple world. If I would now go through the dimensional gate, then according to your explanation I would again be on a world or Earth, but millions of years back in the flying dinosaur era, is that right?
Certainly.
Well, then I am actually again or still on a world similar to Earth, even if many millions of years in the past. If I now come into this world of the past, then according to your statements, I would still have to see the other worlds from that world, right?
Sure, and you would even see the other 2 planets very close, because they are only a few 100,000 kilometers apart. So once you would see the horizon of that primeval world on which you would just stand, as a second world you would see the middle world, which is still wrapped in a radiant steam coat, and as a third world you would see it roughly like the Earth as it exists here in the present time.
But that does not make sense.
It also took us a very long time to solve this strange mystery. In all parallel universes, there are also dimensional radiations that create the gate in the Bermuda Triangle. However, 3,500 years ago, when Venus shook the Earth, the dimensional harmony was disturbed and 2 planets, the primordial planet and the gaseous planet, were dragged into the dimension of the completed planet, after which the dimensional gate returned to normal. Therefore, in that dimension, these 3 different planets exist in that solar system. So you could almost say that the same worlds there exist 3 times in 3 different stages of development, which of course is illogical.
That is fantastic. I should be able to see and photograph it.
Your wish may be granted. For a long time I have promised you that I will take you into another dimension one day. If you want, then we can visit this 3-world dimension, although I would also have to order Father there. With my beam ship I can penetrate into that or any other dimension, but I cannot return. We will need Father's spaceship to do that.
Of course, that is fine with me too. Then I can shake Ptah's hand again. Can I take some pictures?
Certainly.
Great, and when will that be?
Before I have to go away for a long time.
Then this will be in the next few days or weeks?
Certainly.
Well, then I do not want to be too modest and express the wish to go for a walk on the good old earth in the past, so to speak. That would really be another experience for me.
You're really not modest in this. You will want to go dinosaur hunting again, will not you?
Not necessarily, because you know that I only kill an animal if it cannot be avoided.
Sure, it was foolish of me. But I will order everything and have a suit made for you. If it is all right with you, I will photograph you in it.
That would give a picture, maybe together with your father?
This can be set up safely because he is not active on the Earth and does not have to fear recognition.
Well, I am looking forward to it now. I also asked all the questions that kept me busy.
Then farewell and greet all friends.